Plotinus was one of the most influential philosophers in antiquity after Plato and Aristotle. In his philosophy, there are three principles: the one, the intellect, and the soul. Historians of the 19th century invented the term Neoplatonism and applied it to Plotinus's philosophy. His metaphysical writings have inspired centuries of Islamic, Jewish, Christian, and Gnostic metaphysicians. The issue of happiness is one of Plotinus's greatest imprints on Western thought, as he was one of the first to introduce the idea that happiness is attainable only within consciousness. From all accounts, his personal and social life exhibited the highest moral and spiritual standards. He disliked talking about his own life, disapproved of meat, and refused medications containing animal substances. Plotinus's final words were, "Try to raise the divine in yourselves to the divine in the all." Long before his physical departure from this world, the philosopher entrusted two of his closest disciples, Porphyry and Aemilius, with the extensive task of collecting, revising, and compiling his writings. Thus, the Six Enneads was published to share Plotinus's precious insights with countless generations. It consists of 54 treatises varied in length, arranged in 6 sets of 9, or Ennead, in 3 volumes. The Enneads are sorted by levels of sophistication, starting with the first Ennead, which emphasizes ethical topics. Graceful viewers, today we will continue with our program. Excerpts from the 6 Enneads by Plotinus, Vegetarian, on True Happiness, Part 2 of 2, on Words of Wisdom. The following excerpts are selected from the 4th tractate of the first Ennead. The first Ennead, 4th tractate, on True Happiness, Section 5. But what of sorrows, illnesses, and all else that inhibit the native activity? The sage, we shall be told, may bear such afflictions and even take them lightly, but they could never be his choice, and the happy life must be one that would be chosen. The sage, that is, cannot be thought of as simply a sage soul, no count being taken of the bodily principle in the total of the being. He will no doubt take all bravely, until the body's appeals come up before him, and longing and loathing penetrate through the body to the inner man. And since pleasure must be counted in towards the happy life, how can one that thus knows the misery of ill fortune or pain be happy, however sage he be? Such a state of bliss self-contained is for the gods. Men, because of the less noble part subjoined in them, must needs seek happiness throughout all their being, and not merely in some one part. If the one constituent be troubled, the other, answering to its associate's distress, must inevitably suffer hindrance in its own activity. There is nothing but to cut away the body or the body's sensitive life, and so secure that self-contained unity essential to happiness. The first Ennead, 4th tractate, on True Happiness, Section 6. Now, if happiness did indeed require freedom from pain, sickness, misfortune, disaster, it would be utterly denied to anyone confronted by such trials. But if it lies in the fruition of the authentic good, why turn away from this term and look to means, imagining that to be happy, a man must need a variety of things, none of which enter into happiness? If in fact felicity were made up by heaping together all that is at once desirable and necessary, we must bid for these also. But if our quest is of a term and not of terms, that only can be elected which is ultimate and noblest, that which calls to the tenderest longings of the soul. The quest and will of the soul are not pointed directly towards freedom from this fear. The reason which disciplines away our concern about this life has no fundamental quarrel with things of this order. It merely resents their interference. Sometimes, even, it must seek them. Essentially, all the aspiration is not so much away from evil as towards the soul's own highest and noblest. This attained, all is won and there is rest. And this is the veritably willed state of life. There can be no such thing as willing the acquirement of necessaries. If will is to be taken in its strict sense and not misapplied to the mere recognition of need, it is certain that we shrink from the unpleasant, and such shrinking is assuredly not what we should have willed. To have no occasion for any such shrinking would be much nearer to our taste. But the things we seek tell the story as soon as they are ours. For instance, health and freedom from pain. Which of these has any great charm? As long as we possess them, we set no store upon them. Anything which, present, has no charm and adds nothing to happiness, which when lacking is desired because of the presence of an unknowing opposite, may reasonably be called a necessity but not a good. Such things can never make part of our final object. Our term must be such that though these pleasanter conditions be absent and their contraries present, it shall remain still intact. The First Ennead, Fourth Tractate, on True Happiness, Section 7. Then why are these conditions sought and their contraries repelled by the man established in happiness? Here is our answer. These more pleasant conditions cannot, it is true, add any particle towards the sage's felicity, but they do serve towards the integrity of his being. While the presence of the contraries tends against his being or complicates the term, it is not that the sage can be so easily deprived of the term achieved, but simply that he that holds the highest good desires to have that alone, not something else at the same time, something which, though it cannot banish the good by its coming, does yet take place by its side. In any case, if the man that has attained felicity meets some turn of fortune that he would not have chosen, there is not the slightest lessening of his happiness for that. If there were, his felicity would be veering or falling from day to day. The death of a child would bring him down, or the loss of some trivial possession. No, 1,000 mischances and disappointments may befall him and leave him still in the tranquil possession of the term. One that sets great store by wood and stones, or by mortality among mortals, cannot yet be the sage, whose estimate of death, we hold, must be that it is better than life in the body. But suppose that he himself is offered a victim in sacrifice, can he think it an evil to die beside the altars? But if he go unburied, wheresoever it lie, under earth or over earth, his body will always rot. But if he has been hidden away, not with costly ceremony, but in an unnamed grave, not counted worthy of a towering monument? The littleness of it! But if he falls into enemies' hands, into prison, there is always the way towards escape, if none towards well-being. He would reflect that the nature of this all is such as brings these things to pass, and men must bow the head. Besides, in many cases, captivity will certainly prove an advantage, and those that suffer have their freedom in their hands. If they stay, either there is reason in their staying, and then they have no real grievance, or they stay against reason when they should not, and then they have themselves to blame. Clearly, the absurdities of his neighbors, however near, cannot plunge the sage into evil. His state cannot hang upon the fortunes, good or bad, of any other men.